Alright, so I don't even know where to start with this. I wasn't planning on posting this, but I can't stop thinking about what happened. I keep replaying it in my head, over and over, like if I go through it enough times, maybe I'll make sense of it. But I can't. And I need to get it out. So, here goes. This happened about 2 weeks ago. My buddy Tyler and I had this thing where we'd explore abandoned places. Not that whole urban explorer thing where people take pretty pictures of decrepit buildings. Nah, we were just idiots who liked creeping ourselves out. Sneaking in, walking through rotting hallways, making up stories about what might have happened there. It was dumb fun. There's this old factory on the outskirts of town. If you grew up around here, you've heard of it. Way back, it used to be some kind of processing plant, no one's sure for what. Some say textiles, others say chemicals. It's been shut down for decades, just sitting there, rusting and forgotten. Every few years, people talk about tearing it down, but nothing ever happens. That night, Tyler bailed on me last minute, something about his girlfriend wanting to watch a movie. I should have just gone home, but I was already hyped up, so I decided to check the place out alone. Stupid, I know. I parked a few blocks away, just in case. The factory sat at the end of a dead road, swallowed by weeds and half-collapsed fences. The air smelled like damp metal and something faintly rotten, like the earth itself was trying to digest the place. The building was massive, all steel bones and shattered windows. Graffiti covered every inch of the lower walls, tags overlapping in a chaotic mess of color. Some were just names, but others were weird. Symbols. Faces that weren't quite right. One near the entrance stuck with me, a figure with an impossibly stretched out face, black pits for eyes. I stepped through a gap in the fence, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The wind whistled through broken glass, making the whole place groan like it was alive. Inside, the air was thick with dust, swirling in the beam of my light. Old machinery sat rusting in place, their hulking forms like sleeping giants. Conveyor belts sagged under years of decay. In the distance, something dripped steadily. I moved deeper. Footsteps echoed, mine, but not. The sound bounced weirdly, like there was someone else moving just half a step behind me. I told myself it was just the acoustics, just the empty space playing tricks. Then I saw it. At first, I thought it was just another pile of old rags, slumped against one of the rusted machines. But my flashlight caught something wet. Shiny. Flesh. It looked like a person, but the skin, it wasn't right. It stretched too tight over the bones, glistening under the light like it had been oiled. No hair, no eyebrows, just smooth, pale skin pulled so taut I could make out the shapes of tendons underneath. And it wasn't moving. I held my breath. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. It was just, sitting there, hunched over, arms limp at its sides. It didn't react to the light, didn't move. I don't know how long I stood there. 30 seconds. A minute. Then, finally, I exhaled. Just a squatter. Maybe sick. Maybe dead. I took a step back. And that's when it twitched. Just a little. A tiny shift, like when someone's asleep and their body jerks. But that was enough. I turned on my heel and bolted. I was halfway to the entrance when I heard it. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Something wetter. A slow, dragging sound, like bare flesh sliding against metal. I didn't look back, that I ran. Hard. My flashlight bounced wildly as I tore through the factory, my boots slamming against the concrete floor. The air was thick, heavy, like the whole building was pressing down on me. I felt it in my chest, in my ribs, like something was wrapping around my lungs, squeezing. But behind me, I could hear it. That sound. It wasn't footsteps. Footsteps would have made sense. Footsteps would have meant legs. But what I heard was dragging, skin against metal, flesh scraping over concrete. It was slow, uneven, like something was pulling itself forward in wet, jerky motions. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My instincts were screaming at me, "Don't look, just run." I nearly ate shit when my foot caught on a chunk of debris. I stumbled forward, slamming into a rusted railing. My flashlight slipped from my grip, hit the ground, and spun wildly. The beam flailed across the factory walls, flashing over twisted metal, shattered windows. And I only saw it for a second before the light spun away, but that was enough. It had moved. Not much, just a few feet from where I first saw it, but it was closer. Too close. Its body was twisted now, half leaning forward, its stretched out skin glistening under the flickering light. No visible mouth, no eyes, just that slick, smooth surface that looked too tight, like it was barely containing something underneath. And then it twitched again. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed my flashlight and booked it down the corridor. The air smelled different now. Stronger. A mix of rust and something else, something organic. It was sticking to the back of my throat, thick and sour. My pulse was hammering in my skull. I knew I was close to the exit. Just a little further, just a few more steps. A sound stopped me cold. SHRRK. Not a voice. Not footsteps. Just that horrible, wet sliding. Closer. I forced myself to look. The flashlight beam flickered over the machinery, the rusted remains of the factory. Empty. Nothing. But I knew, it was there. I could feel it. Something in the air, in the silence, was pressing in on me, wrapping itself around me like invisible fingers. I took a step back. And that's when I saw the shadow shift. Not a normal shadow. Not cast by my light. It peeled itself from the darkness, slow and deliberate. A shape too tall, too thin, unfolding from the metal skeleton of the factory. And then, finally, it moved fast. A blur of slick, stretched flesh lunging. I ran that I sprinted, my legs screaming, lungs burning. The air felt thick, heavy, like I was running through something alive. Behind me, that sound. SHRRK. Wet, dragging. Closer. I didn't think. I just ran. The factory was a maze of rusted walkways and collapsed beams, but I knew the way out, or at least, I thought I did. Every shadow felt wrong now, stretched and shifting, like they were moving when I wasn't looking. The walls loomed, the ceiling pressed down. I wasn't just being chased. I was being herded. I spotted a metal staircase leading up to the catwalks. Not the way I came, but I didn't care. I took the steps two at a time, the whole structure groaning under my weight. My flashlight swung wildly, flashing over rusted rails and broken glass. Halfway up, the sound changed. It wasn't dragging anymore. It was something else now. Something worse. Breathing. Slow, wet. Not like a person. Too deep, too thick, like something struggling to fit inside its own skin. Ha ha. I froze. It was right below me. I made the mistake of looking down. I shouldn't have. It was there. At the bottom of the stairs. Standing now, its body unfolding in ways that didn't make sense. The skin over its limbs was too tight, stretched over wrong angles. It had no mouth, no eyes, nothing but slick, glistening flesh. But somehow, I knew it was looking at me. The air felt heavy, thick with something rotten and worn. The flashlight trembled in my grip. My knees locked. Then it breathed again. Ha ha. That was enough. I turned and ran up the last few steps. The catwalk groaned under my weight as I sprinted across. The metal rattled, rust flaking beneath my boots. I could barely hold the flashlight steady. Below me, the factory stretched into darkness, broken machinery casting jagged shadows. For a second, I thought I'd lost it. Then I heard it again. Not behind me. Above. Something moved in the rafters. I didn't stop to think. I bolted for the end of the catwalk. There was a rusted ladder leading down, barely attached to the wall. I grabbed it without thinking, swinging my body over the edge. The metal snapped. I felt that I hit the ground hard. The impact rattled up my spine, knocking the air out of my lungs. My flashlight slipped from my grip and spun across the floor, its beam flickering wildly through the dark. Pain screamed through my body, but I didn't have time to care. Because I wasn't alone down here. Somewhere in the shadows, it was still moving. Not fast. Not running. Just that slow, wet shifting. SHRRK. The sound slid over my skin like something physical, like fingers dragging down my spine. I scrambled for my flashlight, my hands slipping over grime and dust. I found it. Turned it toward the noise. And there it was. Closer. Too close. It was standing now, not hunched over like before. Taller. The stretched skin pulled so tight over its frame that it looked ready to split. Its limbs, too long, too thin, hung unnaturally at its sides. But the worst part? It wasn't moving. It just stood there. Completely still. Not breathing, not twitching. Like it was waiting. I didn't move. I couldn't. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might shake the walls. Then. A tiny twitch. Its head. Just the slightest tilt. Like it was curious. Like it was trying to figure me out. A sharp, cold terror crawled up my throat. I knew, if I moved, it would move too. I swallowed hard. My legs screamed to run, but I stayed frozen. My brain was caught in some kind of primal logic. If I don't move, maybe it won't either. But then. It breathed again. Ha ha. That wet, heavy inhale, dragging through the silence. And this time, I saw it, the skin on its chest bulged outward, like something inside was pressing against it. Like the thing wearing that body wasn't meant to fit. That was it. Something inside me shattered. I turned and ran. And that's when I heard it move. Not slow anymore. Not dragging. Fast. The sound of bare, slick flesh slapping against concrete. Coming after me that I don't remember thinking. I don't remember making a choice. 1 second I was frozen, heart pounding in my throat, then my body just took over. I turned and ran. Not a controlled sprint. Not a planned escape. I just bolted like something primal inside of me had finally snapped. And that's when I heard it move. Not slow. Not the dragging, wet shift from before. Fast. So fucking fast. The sound of bare, slick flesh slamming against the ground, like something crawling after me on all fours. I didn't look. I couldn't look. I ran harder, faster than I ever had in my life. My boots slammed against the concrete, sending up clouds of dust. The factory was a blur around me, twisted metal, rusted machines, shadows swallowing everything. But I wasn't outrunning it. The sound was right behind me. That horrible, unnatural slapping of flesh on the floor, moving like something that had never needed to run before, but now, it was learning. And it was learning fast. The layout of the factory was a maze of collapsed beams and dead ends, but my feet carried me on pure instinct. Somewhere ahead, I saw a hallway leading deeper into the building. Not an exit, but I had no other choice. I veered left, skidding into the corridor. The walls here were lined with old, rusted pipes. Some still dripped, leaving black streaks down the concrete. The air was thicker here, hotter, like something was breathing all around me. And then, I made a mistake. I glanced back. And it was there. Not running upright. Not crawling like an animal. It was moving like it knew me. Like it had seen a person run before and was imitating it. Its body jerked in unnatural motions, like something learning how to use legs that weren't supposed to belong to it. Its arms hung too long, swinging with each step. Its knees bent at wrong angles. But it was getting faster. The stretched, glistening skin barely held together, shifting over its frame with each movement. I still couldn't see a face, just that pull-tight flesh, like something inside was pressing against it from the inside. I turned back. I had to focus. Had to run. The hallway split ahead, one way led deeper into darkness, the other toward what looked like an old office. The doorway was open. I made for it. I dove inside, slamming the door behind me. No lock. No way to block it. I stumbled back, my flashlight shaking as I swung it wildly over the room. An old office. Rotting furniture. A rusted filing cabinet tipped over in the corner. A broken desk, covered in something dark and dried. Papers scattered across the floor, crumbling with age. No other exits. Just me. And the door. And on the other side. It stopped moving. The sound just cut off. Silence. Thick, suffocating. My breath was too loud in my ears. It was right outside. I knew it. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. Standing just beyond the door. Waiting. Like it was giving me a moment. Like it was letting the fear settle into my bones. Then. Tap. A single, wet tap against the door. Not a bang. Not a scratch. Just a tap. Like it was testing something. Then another. Tap. Tap. Each one deliberate. Calculated. Like it knew exactly how much I was falling apart inside. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. I just stared at the door, waiting for it to come crashing in. But it didn't. Instead, it did something worse. It leaned against the door. The wood bulged inward. Not like weight was pressing against it. Not like something was trying to force its way in. Like something inside that stretched tight skin was pressing outward. The surface rippled. Something was moving underneath it. Something inside. And then. It started breathing again. Ha-ha-acha. So close. Right against the wood. And I realized then. It wasn't trying to break in. It was waiting for me to come out. That I pressed my back against the farthest wall of the office, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. My body screamed for air, but I couldn't breathe right, not when I could hear it breathing too. Ha-ha-ha. A slow, thick exhale, wet and heavy, pressing through the thin barrier of the door like it could sink into me. The bulging shape beneath its skin rippled again, the door flexing with its movement. I was trapped. No other exits. No windows. Just that thing standing on the other side of the door, pressing against it like it was listening to my heartbeat. Waiting. I had no plan. No way out. My hands fumbled over the desk, searching for anything, a weapon, an escape, something. Papers crumbled under my grip, disintegrating into dust. A broken stapler. An old coffee mug. Nothing that could help me. And then. The door handle turned. Click. The knob barely twisted, just enough to let me know it was trying. Just enough to tell me it knew what doors were. I clenched my teeth so hard my jaw ached. My flashlight trembled in my grip as I aimed it at the door, as if the light could do anything to stop what was on the other side. The handle twitched again. Then stopped. Another silence. Something worse than noise. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my skull. Then. A new sound. Stretching. A wet, slow, sinewy sound, like skin being pulled apart. And for the first time, I heard something else underneath it. Something inside. A shifting. A slithering. A noise that didn't belong to one thing, but many. I gripped the desk behind me, feeling my stomach twist. What was I hearing? The surface of the door bulged again. But this time, something pushed through. A small, dark indent forming near the center, not a hand, not a fist. Something else. The wood around it began to split. I could hear the groan of the old, rotting material as it stretched outward, something pressing against it from inside that too tight skin. A thin, pointed shape. Something sharp. Something that shouldn't be inside a body. I could only stare as it pushed further, forcing the wood to crack around it. The air in the room changed. Something smelled wrong. Not rot. Not blood. Something old. Something that didn't belong in a place like this. A deep nausea rolled through me, my stomach twisting violently, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I knew I wasn't just running from some twisted, deformed thing. It wasn't just a creature. It was wearing something. Or worse. It was trying to wear me next. Then the door buckled inward. Not broken. Not kicked in. It bent, like something was peeling its way through. Like it didn't need doors. Like it only needed skin. And it had found mine. The door didn't break. It peeled open. Would split apart like something was unfolding it, not with force, not with violence, but carefully. Like peeling away skin. I couldn't move. My body locked up, my muscles screaming to run, but my legs refused. The flashlight trembled in my grip, its beam shaking wildly across the door as the bulging shape beneath the skin pushed forward. And then, the first part of it slipped through. Not a hand. Not a limb. Something thin. Wet. Needle-like. It glided out, stretching from the thing's body, dark and glistening under the light. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. It wasn't a bone. It wasn't flesh. It was something else, wearing flesh. I swallowed back a choking noise rising in my throat, my entire body pulling itself into the farthest corner of the room. My brain was screaming at me to run, to hide, to do anything. But then the breathing changed. It stopped. Like it had been holding back this whole time. Like it had been pretending to need air. The skin stretched tighter, something moving underneath it. The shape of its chest bulged, and for the first time, I saw something shifting against the surface. A face. Not its face. Someone else's. Pressed from the inside. A mouth opened in the bulging skin, wide, stretching, as if someone trapped inside was screaming to get out. And suddenly, I understood. It wasn't just wearing skin. It was filling it. Using it. Trying to fit. The nausea slammed into me so hard I nearly collapsed. My vision swam. I could barely hold on to reality. The thing inside the skin wasn't shaped right, it was something else, something pushing against its too tight casing, forcing its way into something it didn't belong in. And now, it had seen me. It had felt me. And it wanted to try me next. That's when I heard it. A low, gurgling sound. Like laughter. Like something inside it was laughing. And that was finally enough. I snapped out of my paralysis, launched forward, grabbed the heaviest object I could find, the rusted office chair, and hurled it straight at the thing. The moment it hit, the peeling door collapsed inward, but I wasn't there to see it. I was already moving. I barreled out of the office, sprinting back down the corridor, ignoring everything, ignoring the sound, ignoring the wet shifting behind me. My entire body was in fight-or-die mode. There was only one thing I could do. Get out. I tore through the factory, barely seeing, barely feeling my legs as they pumped forward. I stumbled over rusted beams, shoved past piles of debris, my lungs burning, my heart slamming against my ribs. And then I saw it. The exit. The rusted metal door, hanging half open where I'd first come in. I didn't think. I didn't stop. I threw myself through it. Out into the night. Out into the cold air. Out of that place. I ran until I couldn't. Until my legs gave out beneath me, and I collapsed into the dirt, gasping, my vision spinning. And behind me, the factory sat in silence. Dark. Motionless. Empty. But I knew better. I knew it was still inside. Still trying to fit. Still waiting for something else to wear. I don't know how long I lay there. How long it took for my body to come back to me. But when I finally pulled myself up, I knew one thing. I would never, never go back. I don't care if they tear that place down, if they burn it to the ground. Because I know it's still there. Still learning. Still waiting. And someday, someone else is going to step inside that factory. And maybe next time, it'll fit just right.